It's not the circumstances or the events that are creating our results. It is our thoughts about those circumstances or events that ultimately create our results. And so if I just change the way that I'm thinking about something, then I can change my emotions around that thing, and I can change my behaviors, and ultimately I can change the whole outcome. And that is where empowerment comes from.
Welcome to Parents and Teens Rising, the podcast that bridges the gap between parents and teens and helps families thrive. I'm Jasmine Chandler, teen and parent coach, wilderness rites of passage guide, and founder of Guided Passages. After over 16 years of working with young people, I know how challenging and rewarding these years can be. Each week, we'll explore real conversations, practical tools, and fresh perspectives to help you connect with your teen, support their confidence, and navigate the ups and downs. Let's rise together.
Hey everyone, and welcome back into the podcast. Today, I am going to be talking to you about something that I think has the power to not only transform the life of your teenager, but your life as well. This is work that is so simple, yet so profound. And so today we're going to be talking about something that has changed my life for sure, and changed so many of the lives of the teenagers that I work with through coaching. And that is the power of your thoughts. So whether you're a parent listening to this on your commute, or maybe you're even a teen who stumbled onto this episode, or anyone who has ever felt stuck, anxious, unmotivated, or overwhelmed, this episode is for you. So today we're going to be talking about how thoughts impact everything from your teen's confidence on the soccer field to the way you show up in your relationship with them. We're going to get very practical, and we're going to talk about why this is a daily practice and not a one and done fix. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So first things first, I want to introduce a framework for how we can understand and work with our thoughts, and it comes from CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. You've probably heard this term thrown around, but let me give you a definition of what it is and who it's for. So CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is a structured, evidence-based form of psychological treatment developed in the 1960s by psychiatrist Aaron Beck. And unlike older forms of therapy that have you digging through your past, CBT is problem-oriented and present-focused. So it really deals with identifying and changing the thoughts and behavioral patterns that are creating difficulty in your life right now. CBT places a strong emphasis on helping people learn to be their own therapists, which is one of the reasons I love it so much. It's a skill set that you can actually take with you. So although CBT was originally designed to treat depression, it has since been found to be effective for a wide range of mental health conditions and day-to-day psychological challenges, including anxiety disorders, OCD, PTSD, eating disorders, stress, and even insomnia. It has been adapted and studied for children, adolescents, adults, couples, and even families. But what I really want you to hear is that you don't have to be in a clinical setting or have a diagnosed condition to benefit from the principles of CBT. These are life skills, and they are for all of us. So at the center of CBT is something that's called the TEB cycle. And TEB stands for thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And this cycle is the backbone of everything we're going to talk about today. So here's how it works. Every single experience you have, every conversation, every event, every circumstance in your life, it gets filtered through your thoughts first. Your thoughts create your emotions. Your emotions then drive your behaviors and your actions. And then your behaviors and actions are what produce your results. So it looks like this. Thoughts lead to emotions, emotions lead to behaviors, and behaviors lead to results. And that seems really simple. But the implications of that are so huge, because if I can interrupt or shift the thought that I'm thinking, I can then change the entire downstream experience. I then change what I feel, what I do, and ultimately what I create in my life. All right, let me give you a quick example. So 2 teenagers are taking the same exact test, and they both get a B-. And the first teen thinks, I studied hard and I just didn't get it this time. I know what I need to work on. The second teen thinks, I'm so bad at this. I'm never going to understand this subject. And those 2 thoughts produce completely different emotional experiences. One feels determined and one feels defeated. And those two emotional states produce completely different behaviors going forward. So one student keeps engaging while the other one starts to avoid things. And over time, the results in that class diverge dramatically. And it's not because of aptitude, but because of thoughts. So that is the TEB cycle in action. And this isn't just theoretical. The research on this is really robust. Which brings me to the next point that I want to talk about today. One of the most powerful discoveries in modern neuroscience is the concept of neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. So for a long time, scientists believed that the brain was essentially fixed after childhood. We now know that that's not true. The brain is malleable. It changes and adapts based on our experiences, our environment, and yes, our thoughts. And so the more you think a thought, the stronger and more automatic that neural pathway becomes. So if you're repeatedly thinking thoughts like, I'm not smart enough, or I always mess things up, those pathways get reinforced over time, and they become the grooves that your brain automatically defaults to. But the good news is that you can actually create new grooves in your brain. You can literally rewire your brain by consciously and intentionally choosing different thoughts. And for teenagers especially, this is not just possible. It's actually easier than it is for adults because the teenage brain is in a period of heightened neuroplasticity. So their prefrontal cortex is still developing, and their brain is actively pruning and reinforcing pathways based on what it's being asked to do. And what this means is that the thought habits a teenager builds right now have an outsized impact on who they become. And this brings me to one of my favorite examples of this in action. So I don't know if you watched the Winter Olympics this year, but I was watching and I saw one athlete that really, really impressed me, and her name is Eileen Gu. And she is an Olympic freestyle skier who has become one of the most decorated free skiers in Olympic history. So at the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, she won gold in big air and half pipe and silver in slopestyle. And at the 2026 Games, she defended her half-pipe gold and added 2 more silvers. She's also a model and a student at Stanford, and a young woman who has been incredibly vocal about the mental frameworks that she's used to perform at her best. So one of the quotes that I love that came out of her interviews from the 2026 Olympics, she said, "You can control how you think, and therefore you can control who you are. And especially as a young person with neuroplasticity on my side, I can literally become exactly who I want to be." So I love this quote so much because Eileen Gu isn't just talking about positive thinking. She's talking about cognitive agency. She understands that her thoughts aren't just passive background noise. They are active architects of her identity, her performance, and her possibilities. But at that level of competition, almost everyone is put in the physical work. But what separates athletes at the very top is often what's happening between their ears, right? So the athlete who can manage fear and stay present under pressure and recover quickly from mistakes and then also maintain a belief in themselves when the stakes are highest, that is the athlete who has done the mental work. And Eileen Gu understands this not as an adult looking back on her career, but as a young person who is in the thick of it. She is actively using neuroplasticity as a tool for her own benefit. So imagine if every teenager understood that. Imagine if every teen who walked into an audition or a tryout or a test or a presentation or a new social situation knew that the thoughts they chose to think in that moment were actively shaping their brain and their results. So that's what I'm talking about when I teach thought work. I mean, really what that means is that we have the power to direct the entire course of our life. What it means is that it's not the circumstances or the events that are creating our results. It is our thoughts about those circumstances or events that ultimately create our results. And so if I just change the way that I'm thinking about something, then I can change my emotions around that thing, and I can change my behaviors, and ultimately I can change the whole outcome. And that is where empowerment comes from. Because if I'm not just a victim of my circumstances, that means I have agency, that I get to choose, I get to decide what my life looks like. I get to decide what's possible for me. I get to decide what I'm capable of, right? Nobody else. Not life circumstances, not place of birth, not family of origin, none of that. I get to decide. and that is empowerment. So let's get really practical here, because I want you to be able to take this into a conversation with your teen. Or if you're a teen who is listening, I want you to be able to take this into your life this week. So the areas where I see thought work matter most for teenagers are confidence, motivation, and anxiety. So let's start with confidence. Confidence isn't something you either have or you don't have. I know it can feel that way. It seems like some teenagers are out there just feeling like they're on top of the world, and they seem to go after everything with ease, and they just move through the world with their shoulders back and their head high. But that's not how it is. We don't just get born with confidence or born without it. Confidence is a feeling, and feelings are generated by thoughts. So when a teenager tells me they're not confident, the first place I go is, what are you thinking? So negative thought spirals around confidence often sound like, I'm not as good as everyone else. People are going to judge me. I'm going to embarrass myself. They're going to think I'm weird. I always say the wrong thing. And when those thoughts are running on loop before a social situation, a performance, or a tryout, of course the teenager is going to feel anxious and small. And of course they're going to withdraw or hold back. It makes perfect sense. So what we want to do instead is find some positive replacement thoughts that build confidence. And those could sound like, I belong here just as much as anyone else, or my perspective has value, or I'm prepared for this and I can handle whatever happens, or something like, people are mostly thinking about themselves, not judging or thinking about me, or it's okay if this isn't perfect. I'm just learning. I'm new at this. So these aren't toxic positivity statements. They are accurate, grounded, and empowering thoughts that open the door to a different action. All right, so the next one that I often see teens struggle with is motivation. And low motivation in teens almost always has a thought underneath it. So these could be thoughts like, what's the point? Or I'm not going to be good at this anyway. Or it doesn't matter. Or this is too hard. Or I'll never get it. And these thoughts produce feelings of hopelessness, defeat, and apathy. And those feelings produce behaviors like avoidance, procrastination, and disengagement. So some positive replacement thoughts for this might be things like, I haven't learned this yet, but I can. Every time I practice this, I'm getting better, even when I can't see it. Or I don't have to be perfect. I just have to take the next step. So we're constantly noticing the thoughts that we're thinking. And that's where thought work begins. It's with awareness, because when we go into default mode or autopilot, our brain will automatically lean towards the negative. And so what I want to start doing is noticing those thoughts, catching them, questioning them, and replacing them with thoughts that are going to serve me more. If I want to feel motivated, I have to think motivating thoughts, right? If I want to feel confident, I have to think thoughts that are going to make me feel confident. If I want to feel less anxious, I can't keep pouring in catastrophic thoughts into my system that are going to, of course, produce more anxiety. So anxiety is often driven by thoughts about the future. And for teenagers, those thoughts can get really loud and really distorted really fast. So there are a few common thinking traps that show up for anxiety. The first one is what if thinking. So what if I fail? What if everyone sees how nervous I am? What if I forget everything I studied about, right? All of those thoughts lead to worry and worst case scenario, right? And then a more amplified version of that is catastrophic thinking or catastrophizing. And this is where one outcome gets connected to a chain of worst case scenario predictions that spiral way out of proportion to reality. So if I don't pass this test, my whole college career is ruined. Or if I mess up this audition, I'll never get cast in anything. And so what's happening is the brain is taking one moment and turning it into a life sentence. This could also be called overgeneralizing. And then a third thinking error around anxiety is mind reading. So this is where teens convince themselves they already know what other people are thinking. So they hate me. She thinks I'm a loser. Everyone can tell I don't belong here. And the thing about mind reading is that it feels like fact. It doesn't feel like a thought. It feels like something they just know, right? But it's not. It is a story the anxious brain is generating to fill in the blanks and make sense of a circumstance. And really, that's all thoughts are in general, right? They are sentences that we create in our heads to create meaning of our circumstances. It doesn't mean that they're a fact just because I have thought it in my head. It's just something that I have created, right? So that means I get to choose again. I get to think again. I get to choose thoughts that are going to support the outcomes that I actually want for myself. And so for teens in high stake environments, things like AP classes or competitive sports or theater productions, orchestra, speech and debate, the thought patterns I was mentioning around anxiety, like what ifs or catastrophizing or mind reading, those can become really relentless and they can exacerbate any nerves that are normal for those types of situations. And so some replacement thoughts and reframes that they might use in those moments are things like, I have prepared for this and I can trust my preparation. One test, one audition, one moment does not define my whole plan. Nervousness is just energy. It means I care about this. Or I cannot actually read anyone else's mind, or I don't know what they're thinking. Or they can think something like, I can take this one moment at a time. Whatever happens, I can handle it. Or I've done hard things before. So it doesn't need to be the opposite thought, like this is going to be my best performance ever. But just something like I've done hard things before is giving your brain some reassurance in that moment instead of telling your brain the worst case scenario is about to happen. So what I want every teen and parent to understand here is that the anxiety that you feel before a big moment is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that you're doing something that matters. And the thought work isn't about eliminating your nerves. It's just about interrupting the thinking traps before they spiral so that nervous energy fuels you instead of paralyzes you. Okay, so now let's talk about us. As parents, the thoughts we think every day are shaping our emotional experience, our behaviors, our relationships with our teens, and honestly, our own sense of self. So for me personally, I used to fall into thought errors and thinking traps all the time. And of course, I still do. It's part of the human brain. But I would constantly be telling myself things like, I'm too busy, it's too much, this is so stressful, I have too many things on my plate, or even I can't handle this. And every one of those thoughts put me into victim mode. And every one of those thoughts also made me stressed out, grumpy, and dissatisfied, not just with my circumstances, but with myself. And the thing is that when I was operating from that headspace, what it did is it showed up in my parenting, of course, right? So I was quicker to snap. I was less patient. I said no to things I actually wanted to do because I felt so overdone. So I was showing up in survival mode, not as the parent I actually wanted to be. And that was pretty much the first 10 years of my parenting journey. I was living in that state of stress and overwhelm and exhaustion. But when I started catching those thoughts and replacing them with thoughts like, my plate is full of a lot of beautiful things, right? Or I don't need to handle all of this right now. I just need to focus on this one thing, and that is totally doable. That's when my entire energy shifted. And it wasn't because my circumstances changed. My circumstances were exactly the same. The only thing that changed was the story I was telling myself about those circumstances, which all of a sudden made everything feel more manageable and helped me to feel more grounded and more in balance and more centered. And when I'm not operating under stress and overwhelm, I can actually show up in a completely different way for my kids. So instead of snapping, I can pause and regulate. Instead of saying no because I'm burned out, I can say yes. And instead of being reactive, I can be present. So this is one of the most powerful gifts that you can actually give your teen. And it's not the gift of being a perfect parent, but a parent who has done enough of their own thought work to actually be right there in that grounded, centered state where you can hold space, show up in the way you want to, and regulate your own emotions. And it goes even deeper than just parenting, because the thoughts that you think every day about yourself and about your worthiness and your capabilities and your potential, those are actually shaping your entire life. So what you think is possible for you and whether or not you pursue the things that light you up, or whether you model for your teenager what it looks like to go after your own dreams, right? Your thoughts are impacting all of that. And as we all know, our teens are watching us. They're learning about what adulthood looks like from us. And if what they're watching is a parent who has given up on their own dreams because they don't believe they're possible, or a parent who is running on empty and resentment, that is the template they internalize. But if they are watching instead a parent who practices the same thought work they're asking their teen to practice, Someone who catches their own negative spirals and who chooses empowering interpretations, who stays curious and open and grounded, that is a completely different inheritance that we're passing down. All right, so one more thing I want to share with you is that part of why thought work is so powerful, it has to do with the part of your brain called the reticular activating system, or the ROS. The ROS is essentially a filter. It determines what information your brain pays attention to out of the massive flood of stimuli your brain is receiving at any given moment. So the thing about the reticular activating system is that it filters based on what you've told it is important. So through your thoughts and your words and your attention, you're essentially programming your reticular activating system to look for more of whatever you're focused on. So I know you've experienced this. You decided you wanted a certain kind of car, and suddenly you see that car everywhere. And it's not that more of those cars appeared, it's that your ROS is now flagging them as relevant and bringing them to your attention. And the same thing happens with your thoughts. When you're constantly focused on what you don't have, what's going wrong, what's stressful and lacking, your ROS finds more evidence of exactly that. But when you shift your focus to what you're grateful for, what's working and what's possible, your ROS starts surfacing more of that. As Tony Robbins says, where your attention goes, energy flows. Or you might have heard it as what you focus on grows. And what this means is you are essentially creating your own personal algorithm for what you experience in your life. So just think about that for a second. What does your algorithm look like right now? Are you running the drama, reactivity, lack, comparison, and stress bomb algorithm? Or are you running the possibility, abundance, gratitude, beauty, and ease algorithm? Right? We get to choose that, which is amazing, right? Sometimes it feels like we don't get to choose it because, this is happening and that is happening and the bank account is low and the job has this stressor and my teen is acting out and all these things. But amidst all of the challenges that are happening every day, I still get to choose how I think about those challenges. And how I think about those challenges is going to absolutely impact the algorithm that I have for myself, right? So the incredible thing is that you have the power to build the algorithm however you want it to be. You get to direct the course of your own energy and therefore your own possibilities just through what you choose to think and where you choose to put your attention. And to me, that is just about the coolest thing ever. And it has absolutely impacted my life so much. I mean, for years and years and years, I worked, as an educator, and I just kind of was like going through the grind of daily life. I was feeling all those stressors. I was feeling like I was too busy, that this, that, and the other. I was focusing on lack. I was focusing on problems. I was focusing on stressors. And that's how my life was. I was feeling stressed, even though I had all these beautiful things around me, right? I had healthy kids and I had a roof over our heads that was really beautiful. I had a marriage that was great, lots of different things, but I was constantly focusing on what I didn't have or things that were going wrong. And it shaped everything. It shaped my outlook. It shaped what I thought was possible for my life. And when I started doing this work, I started shifting all of those pieces one at a time. And all of a sudden, things that didn't feel possible before started feeling possible. And all of a sudden, instead of living out of that reactivity, I was in a much calmer state because I was practicing being present. I was practicing noticing what was right in front of me instead of, catastrophizing about future worries or whatever it might be. And for someone that's dealt with, depression and anxiety and low confidence and all those types of things like I have, like this is a huge deal. I've even seen, some big shifts over the last few years as I've been running my own business. I'm now in my 5th year, but there have been so many different points where I've embarked on a new challenge or led a program that I was experiencing so much anxiety about. And I would be up at night with insomnia, worrying about all the things that could go wrong with a wilderness trip I was leading or whatever it was. And I would be in internal turmoil, right? As I'm thinking about these things, or even, when a program didn't go and I didn't fill a program, or I had to cancel an event or different things like that, I would get stuck in these thought loops. But because I was practicing and learning these tools more and more and more, I've been able to really, really do the work of catching those thoughts and not allowing myself to go down those spirals. And for me, sometimes it's as simple as, nope, it's not that deep, and just changing my direction, changing my course, changing my focus, and just not even going there. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, if I wake up and I feel a sense of panic or dread or worry, Again, it's like, nope, head on the pillow. All I'm thinking about is sleep, putting my thoughts and intention for what I want instead of what I don't want, right? I don't want to be up with anxiety. I know if I let my mind go down this anxiety spiral right now, I'm going to be up for the next 2 hours thinking about this and I'm not going to be sleeping. But if I redirect my focus and my thoughts towards the sleep that I want and how comfortable my pillow is and how comfortable my bed is and how cozy I am, I can put myself back to sleep. I'm not allowing myself to go down those spirals. And that is work I'm doing every single day. And I'm now reaping the benefits of that because I'm heading into my guiding season this year feeling peaceful, feeling calm, feeling regulated. I know that there's potential things that could happen, but I'm prepared. I'm as prepared as I can be. And it's the same thing with any day of life, right? There's always potential things that could go wrong or could happen. And I just meet the moment with my preparation and then I handle it as it comes instead of self-fulfilling prophecies about catastrophes that I don't even know are going to actually happen. I don't need to spend my time worrying about these things that have not happened yet and most likely won't happen. Instead, I'm going to put my energy and attention towards what could go right and what I already have prepared and that this has gone well before. That's going to help me to feel a lot more calm, a lot more in control, and a lot less anxious. And so to me, that is life-changing. It has absolutely changed my life. And I want that for you, and I want that for your teenager, and I want that for everyone who is, struggling or feeling stuck or feeling anxious or overwhelmed. I want to empower you that you can change those emotions simply by changing your thoughts. You can direct the course of how you feel and the results you get in your life. All right, so let's walk through the same exercise we did for teens, but now for parents. So negative thought spirals parents often run are thoughts like, my teen doesn't listen to anything I say, or I'm failing as a parent, or they're never going to get their act together, or I don't know what I'm doing, or this is just how our relationship is, or I've tried everything and nothing works, or even they just don't care. And those thoughts produce emotions like hopelessness, resentment, shame, and defeat. And those emotions produce behaviors like withdrawing, lecturing, micromanaging, or giving up, none of which move the relationship forward. So here are some replacement thoughts. My teen is doing the best they can with where they are developmentally right now. Or I'm learning how to parent a teenager, and that's okay. This is genuinely hard. Or our relationship is worth investing in and things can change. Or I don't have to have all the answers, I just have to stay present and keep trying. Or even my teen's behavior is communication. What might they be telling me right now? Or there are things about our relationship that are actually going well, and I want to notice those. So these thoughts open up emotional states like compassion, curiosity, and hope. And those states produce very different behaviors: more listening, more repair, and more connection. All right, so one thing I want to remind you of is that this is ongoing work. One of my favorite teachers to learn from about thought work is Byron Katie. And she actually calls all the thought work that she does and she teaches the work. And I'm doing air quotes here for those of you that are listening, because that is exactly what this is. It is a practice. It's ongoing. It requires daily conscious effort and vigilance. And this is why. So when our brain is left to its own devices, it defaults to negativity. And this is due to something that's called negativity bias. This is where our brains have evolved to scan for threats and to anticipate danger and to notice what's wrong in order to help keep us alive. It's a survival mechanism. And it helped to keep our ancestors alive, and it also helps us to stay alive in moments of threat. But in our everyday modern lives, it means that the default setting of our unmanaged brain is to find problems, assign blame, catastrophize, and then repeat the cycle over and over. So we each have about 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day. And on average, around 80% of those thoughts are negative, and about 95% are the same thoughts that we had yesterday. So we're basically running the same negative playlist on repeat every day, largely on autopilot. And that is why we have to be intentional. We have to bring conscious awareness to our thoughts. We have to catch the ones that aren't true and aren't serving us and interrupt them before they spiral. And we have to remind ourselves that not every thought is a fact. Just because your brain offers you the thought, I'm not good enough, does not make it true. The brain generates thoughts constantly. Many of them are old, inherited, habitual, and completely inaccurate thoughts. Your job isn't to believe every thought your brain gives you. Your job is actually to become a conscious observer of your thoughts and to choose which ones you actually want to invest in. And as Henry Ford famously said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And if you really think about that for a second, think about the times that you believed in yourself, that you gave yourself positive thoughts about something that you were going after, that you built yourself up, that you gave yourself some positive affirmations before going into something, and how that impacted your results so much differently than when you told yourself you're not good enough or you can't do it or you don't have what it takes. Your thoughts absolutely impact your outcomes. So might as well think the ones that are going to support the outcome that you want. Okay, let's go ahead and move into our recap because I know we covered a lot of stuff today. So here's what I want you to take with you. CBT teaches us that our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are deeply interconnected and that the most powerful leverage point for change is the thought. The TEB cycle is always running. Your thoughts create your emotions drive your behaviors, and your behaviors produce your results. Neuroplasticity tells us that the brain is changeable, especially for teenagers, and that one of the most powerful ways to change your brain is to change your thoughts. And we learned about that from Eileen Gu, who is living proof of what's possible when a young person understands and harnesses this. And for teens, thoughts about confidence, motivation, and anxiety are not fixed truths. They're patterns that can be observed, interrupted, and replaced with thoughts that open up different possibilities. And for parents, the thoughts you're running about your teen and your relationship and your life and yourself are shaping your emotional experience and your behavior every single day. So doing your own thought work is foundational to showing up the way you actually want to. And then the reticular activating system means that whatever you focus on, you get more of. So you get to decide what your algorithm looks like by where you place your focus. So choose your lens wisely. And then finally, this is a daily practice. Your brain will default to negativity. And that's not a failure. That's just how your brain works. And so your job is to stay awake to your thoughts, catch the ones that aren't serving you, and consciously choose thoughts that are both true and empowering. So this work is simple, but it's not easy. And the more you put it into practice, the more you're going to start seeing the results that you want, not just for yourself, but for your kids as well. All right, so if you want to start practicing this today, and I really hope you do, I want to send you over to episode 10, which is a 5-minute guided meditation for teens and parents designed specifically to help you ignite a positive mindset through the power of your thoughts. It's short, it's sweet, and it's accessible. So I would highly recommend it for both you on your own and your teen on their own. So go check it out, episode 10. I'll link it down below in the show notes. All right, so thank you so much for spending this time with me today. This stuff really lights me up because I have lived it and watched it change so many lives, including the lives of the teenagers I get to work with every single day. So please do share this with a parent friend or with your teen if something in it landed for you. And until next time, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Did you enjoy the show? If so, would you take 30 seconds to subscribe so you don't miss an episode? Leave a quick review so more parents can find these conversations, and maybe even share this episode to your stories. And if you want to connect, please send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at jasmine.guidedpassages, and that's Jasmine with a Y. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.